Hello and welcome back to another episode. Now today, as promised, I'm going to be going through some of my most recent pickups, and these include DVDs, computer games, a couple of comics, graphic novel type things. I want to talk a little bit about an interaction, a bit of a gripe I had with a local computer game store in the past couple of weeks, and also actually there's something else that's fallen into my lap due to circumstances in the past couple of weeks, which I'm actually quite excited about. And at some point in the future, it'll simply have to be the topic of a video that I do. But I want to at least hint at it, at least sort of share it with you today. So look out for that at the end. But before we dive in to the pickups, I just wanted to quickly say a huge heartfelt thank you to everyone who commented so kindly, so sagely, in fact, on my previous video. In fact, in particular, Blue Tonic made a very insightful observation that I would probably be glad that I'd made that video. And I have to say, I already am glad that I recorded that video, in so much as it's what I needed at that time. It is precisely what I had to say, and in some respects, this is the video that I need to do today. We're going to be travelling tomorrow down to Wales for the funeral. The funeral's on Friday, and then we'll probably be travelling up sometime on Saturday or Sunday. And today I just need to do something that's distracting, something that's a bit frivolous, something that's straightforward, as opposed to dealing with all this funeral admin and stuff like that. So I am so glad that I did that video then and this video today. In fact, I couldn't even have done this video yesterday. I tried, but because of all the different stuff I've been having to organise, I simply couldn't do it. So yeah, this has been the right way to do things, and well, thank you again for all those lovely comments. Anyway, let's dive into the pickups, and starting with the films, in no particular order. These films have been purchased for a variety of reasons, ranging from them being new releases that we've been curious about, maybe we didn't get to see them in the cinema, to them being films that I've previously owned that I needed to replace for my collection, to films which I am curious about, having got a recommendation or having seen them reviewed, in particular on YouTube. So starting, as I say, no particular order, with Atomic Blonde. This movie is from the same guys, the same team who produced the John Wick films. Stars Charlize Theron, though, obviously, not Keanu Reeves. And in so many ways, it's not like the John Wick movies. And both me and my wife are huge fans of John Wick 1 and 2, and obviously John Wick 3 is coming soon. But this, in that sense, has been an interesting sort of sidestep for them. It is based on a graphic novel, and it's set in a real place and time, that is the late 80s, early 90s Berlin. And all of that brings a certain texture to this film, along with the wonderful choreography and cinematography. And also, obviously, Charlize Theron being a kick-ass female agent. Equally. She's not, as it were, an entirely normal or functioning human being in any respect, but she's a female agent, and she's brilliant. And as with any good spy thriller, there is a good twist at the end as well. So yeah, highly recommended, especially if you like John Wick. Next, there's Fido, and this is a film that I had not heard about, even though I'm a huge fan of the zombie genre. Fido stars Billy Connolly as a zombie, presumably called Fido. It says, "Good dead are hard to find" is the tagline, and I've got this based on a recommendation from a friend, not least because it's up my street in two ways. It's sort of set in this kind of 1950s Fallout sort of vision of the world, but instead of having robots or Nuka-Cola, they have zombies as a sort of domesticated workforce. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what this film is like. Haven't watched it yet, mainly because I've been in the midst of planning a funeral. Didn't really quite feel appropriate. Next we have Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Now this film is one that I used to have in my DVD collection, and I had to sell it when I first moved to York, had to pay the rent, and I got terrible return on it in terms of, you know, pence on the pound, terrible, you know, probably like 10 pence that I got back for this. But at that point, every penny helped, and at some point I knew I was going to repurchase this, and I got it for 50p, so why not? Of course, it's a classic, wonderful live action and animation interaction going on, and of course, Jessica Rabbit. Oh. No, but Jessica Rabbit, but also actually, to be honest, the amazing villain twist as well. I really appreciated how all that sort of unfolded. It really stuck with me as a kid, and the older I've got, the more I've sort of just come to love that movie. Next we have a box set, a television series, Z Nation. Now, I recently made a video talking about how much I love Z Nation, having seen seasons 1 and 2 streamed on Netflix. And I got this box set for 2 reasons. First of all, to get season 3. Season 3 is not yet available on Netflix, and season 4, strangely, recently was aired on our terrestrial digital TV. It was aired on a channel called Pick in the UK. So we'd recorded season 4 and we was waiting for that missing link. And this was the only way that we could watch it. I could have bought season 3 on its own, but for a couple of pounds extra I got 1, 2 and 3. And this obviously will be a wonderful backup if they ever come down off Netflix, because Netflix sometimes does that, don't they? They sometimes, you know, what they give with one hand they take away with the other, and I don't want to be caught out if Netflix ever does decide to get rid of Z Nation seasons 1 and 2. Season 3 arguably has a bit of a misstep in some storylines, some story arcs. There's some fairly harsh course correction made for the beginning of season 4. Especially with one character in particular, but that's nonetheless entirely forgivable, in so much as it is the characters that matter, and all the way through from the first episode to the most recent one that I've seen, you on that journey with the characters, and the story doesn't take itself too seriously. It was in danger of doing that in season 3, but they've definitely turned things around. Anyway, Z Nation continues to be one of my favourites. Next we have a film that I picked up based on a review that I saw, a recommendation I suppose, based on a review from the Off the Shelf Reviews YouTube channel, and that is Old Boy. Now, Old Boy is a movie that in some respects it needs no introduction. Lots of people love this film in a sort of an underground cultish kind of way. But I hadn't heard about it until I watched that review. But since then, lots of my friends have been saying, of course, I've seen Old Boy. And it's about a guy who gets kidnapped, has to figure out why he's been kidnapped, and then, 15 years later, he needs to try and figure out the person and the purpose. And all of this involves a gritty, grim form of martial arts that he's taught himself while locked in essentially an apartment somewhere. Old Boy is a remarkable piece of cinema from the Tartan Asia Extreme collection, and I've seen a chunk of it, and I look forward to watching the whole movie in its entirety. I still don't know the final twist in terms of who and why, and I'm looking forward to finding out. Next we have a film that I missed in the cinema because, frankly, I didn't want to torture myself and have to pay for a cinema ticket to do it. Assassin's Creed. I love the game series, at least for me the games sort of peaked with Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Assassin's Creed 2 is my other favourite of the series, and really once they went into the Xbox One, PS4 generation, I kind of lost track. And also, to be honest, it felt like they didn't really have a plan. All that mattered was, we're doing another one. The story was kind of just tapering out and becoming very boring, especially in the modern setting, the modern world sort of story. And so far I've only watched half an hour of this on DVD, and then I got distracted because obviously I'm doing all this admin for a funeral, and I haven't been back to the film. That doesn't bode well, but surely at least at some point I'll be able to finish this movie and really get into the assassin bit. Surely it's got to have something that's cool about it, something that's enjoyable. I mean, it's Assassin's Creed, Michael Fassbender jumping off a cathedral, Marion Cotillard and Jeremy Irons. I mean, it's got to be redeemable. Surely, as an Assassin's Creed fan, I can only hope. And, well, I'll watch it sooner rather than later. Next, we have a film called Mortal Kombat. This is a movie that I also had to sell during that great purge in New York. Again, I probably only got 10 pence for it, and it only really cost me about 50p again to buy it back. It is one of the best computer game movie adaptations. That's not saying much, I guess, for the genre, especially given the previous movie we were talking about. Things should have moved on a lot more than they have, arguably, but it is also the best of the Mortal Kombat films, considering the straight-to-DVD terrible schlock we've had in the series ever since. So I had to get it. It's also one of Paul W.S. Anderson's better movies, and I'm glad I have it again. Definitely. Oh, next we have another film that I've got based on a review done by Off the Shelf Reviews, and that is Hesher. As the box says, refreshingly original, New York Post. Raw destruction and aggro comedy punctuated with a blast of crunching metal. Box Office Magazine. It stars Joseph Gordon-Levitt as the eponymous Hesher character, and he's joined by Ryan Wilson and Natalie Portman. And this film is a dark comedy. It is real in its emotional landscape, but hyper-real and slightly ridiculous in terms of its reality. It's a movie about grief. It's about a family that's coming apart at the seams because they don't quite know how to function following the death of an important family member. And in some ways it was a very timely film to watch, actually. In the past couple of weeks, this has been a very useful, emotional film, certainly for me and my wife to watch. We found it quite useful. But also it's just an astonishing performance by Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Hesher is he is a larger-than-life, is a brutally honest kind of character, and this is the sort of film that's kind of cute in a funny sort of way, funny in a dark sort of way, but also it's like the film comes in and just vomits on your carpet. It's brilliant, and Hesher will be probably for quite a while one of my favourite film characters, because he's a bit like how Christopher Nolan described the Joker in The Dark Knight. He's like Jaws. He doesn't have an origin, doesn't really have an end. He just turns up, causes chaos, and ultimately challenges the protagonists of the film. And that's what Hesher is. It's brilliant. And finally, in terms of the DVDs that I picked up, is the Avatar Extended Collector's Edition. I had previously owned this film, and at some point I had gotten rid of it, possibly during the purge, although I'm not sure if this was out then, but certainly at some point I had to sell it anyway. This is the extended version, and the reason why I've got it is because obviously we're going to be having the Avatar sequels coming along in the next few years, and I want to sort of be refreshed, as it were, when they do turn up. But also, I wanted to give James Cameron a second chance on this film. I went to see it in the cinema. I wasn't massively impressed, especially in the context of work such as Terminator 2 and Aliens, this kind of thing. I was expecting, especially with the promise of there being a colonial marine type characters, something like Aliens. And what we got was something that was different. Something that was similar in places, but fundamentally different. I was charmed by Pandora. There was lots of stories when the movie came out that people didn't want to leave the cinema because they'd experienced this 3D world of Pandora. I don't know how true that is. Certainly, it was good for the box office returns, I guess. But despite not being that impressed by Pandora, I did enjoy it. I found the whole premise fascinating, and also actually the xenobiology that they explored in the film as well quite cool. So, especially with the extended scenes, you get a little bit more of that sort of Earth perspective. You get a bit more of a sense of the sort of where Blade Runner meets Aliens meets Avatar kind of feel to the world, and that's really what I was missing in the cinema. I missed that initial platform before we dived into Pandora. So yeah, if you're like me, if you weren't quite sure, but you want to like a James Cameron film, perhaps consider getting the 3-disc collector's edition. And at this point, again, only a couple of pounds. I imagine the price will start going up again though when the sequels come about. Which again, I'm also not sure that we need sequels to Avatar, but they're coming. Moving on to the computer games, there are 3, yes, only 3 games that I've bought in the past couple of months. And this has been partly because I've been deliberately revisiting my computer game library. Playing those games that I picked up for £1 or something because they're amazing games but I haven't yet played them. Finishing those games which I've been desperate to try and actually finish, for example Zelda Minish Cap, courtesy of the Game Boy player, and also frankly getting the most out of the Zelda Breath of the Wild DLC, which I'm also yet to complete. I really want that motorbike. So I suppose that the other flip side of that sort of reassessment of my game library has also been an assessment of why I pick up games, and also what games I want to pick up next, as opposed to just simply saying, seeing, for example, Borderlands, the pre-sequel, for a couple of quid and going, well, I know that's a great game, I'll buy it. I deliberately sought out these 3 games. The first one is for the Wii U, and it is Shovel Knight. Now, this is a game that I do already have on the 3DS, and it is basically the same game. But for various reasons, the 3DS title has been bothering me. There's something about the way that the 3DS buttons are laid out that makes it kind of hard to play this game in the context that I normally would play it on the 3DS. In particular, lying down, for example, in bed. I just find it really awkward. Basically, my hands are just a bit too big to really do the hardcore platforming that's required. So I figured I'd get the full-blown console title version of it. This version came with the soundtrack included, and actually someone hadn't downloaded it yet. This was a second-hand copy, and so far I'm making a lot more progress in the game. So I wanted this game because I wanted to really get into it. I've got this Shovel Knight amiibo, and I think because I'm making progress in this, that will also nudge me to make progress on the 3DS when I'm on the go. So Shovel Knight on the Wii U. The next 2 games I got because in the past couple of years I was given a PlayStation 2 Slim by a wonderful friend who wanted to give me the gift of finally playing Fatal Frame, or Project Zero as it's known in the PAL regions. And with that obviously came the possibility of PlayStation backwards compatibility. That led me to buy, about a year ago I think, Resident Evil, the first Resident Evil game on PlayStation. I have it up on my shelf over there. But also these 2, which I've always seen in the back of computer game magazines, advertisements. I remember them really making an impression, and in particular, this one, Die Hard Trilogy. I really wanted to play this game. It looked like one of those light gun arcade cop shooters. I can't quite remember what it's called. Time Crisis. That's it. It looks a little bit like Time Crisis in places. So Die Hard Trilogy was one of them, and the other one actually was the Alien Trilogy. Both of these games have been sort of on my, I suppose, my wish list for a long time. Games that I've always been curious about, and now finally I get a chance to play them. So 3 titles, I suppose in that sense 7 games in all, but deliberate pickups and purchases. Next, we are going to take a look at the graphic novels that I've picked up in the past couple of months. And again, there's not a huge number. I mentioned some pickups actually from the beginning of January in a previous video, so I'm not re-mentioning those. But starting with a couple of volumes that I picked up literally over the weekend, the Death Note Black Edition, volumes 1 and 2. Now, I believe there are a total of 6 volumes in the Black Edition, and I have got somewhere on my shelves a random volume of Death Note, but I really wanted to start from the beginning, so this is a great opportunity to do that. And on average, these black edition volumes go for about £5 each on Amazon and on eBay or whatever. And these two I picked up for £4 in total, so £2 each. Plus they have a really lovely sort of texture, sort of a almost like a rubberized knife handle or something. So they feel quite sort of luxurious in that sense, and I love the black pages as well. So black edition, all about death, just perfect. And there he is, the death god himself. So yeah, Death Note volumes 1 and 2 for a bargainous price, and eventually I'll bit by bit make my way through all 6 volumes, I think. Next we have a fairly inevitable purchase in some respects, and that is Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 1, Power and Responsibility. I have in recent months really been getting into the Ultimate Spider-Man comic series. As you know, I purchased a couple of random volumes from a shop in Biker not that long ago, and while I may never own all of the 20 or 30 odd volumes, it's always good to at least start at the beginning if you can. And so this is the beginning of that story, and I'm glad that I have it. I simply had to bring it home with me. Although on the back it says high school, puberty, first dances. There are many pitfalls to being young. Compound these with intense personal tragedy and superpowers, and you can start to visualize the world of Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man. Witness the rebirth of a legend as Peter learns that with great power there must also come great responsibility. And as I reading that, I'm not sure back in the early 2000s when I was on the back end of puberty, as I would have appreciated seeing the word puberty on the back of my Spider-Man books. But now it doesn't bother me at all, obviously. But yeah, so I had to have it. I knew I had to have it. Next we have a book that I didn't have to have, but I kind of wanted, in so much as I appreciate what the original book did, and while I don't appreciate the movie, I do like some of the movies linked to this particular mashup franchise, I guess, and that is Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, the graphic novel. It is entirely colourless. There's no it's black and white drawings, for the most part line drawings, a little bit of ink and cross-hatching or shading here and there. So it's a simple book in that sense. But I liked what I read of the text of the book when it first came out. And while I'm probably never going to see the film because this looks terrible, this looks like an awful lot of fun. And it's another addition to my ever-growing zombie lateral library. I like anything that's a bit of a twist on zombies. And actually, frankly, at some point I might have to make a video about that, because I've got quite a range of different types of zombie fiction now, and this is just adding to that, really. Next we have a book that I've always wanted and have never seen in the wild, as it were. I've not wanted to buy this one online because the price is normally a bit too high for my taste, as it were. But I saw this for the first time in person and figured I would pick it up, and that is World Without Superman, or World Without a Superman. And it follows up on the death of Superman's story arc, where he dies at the hands of Doomsday, famously. This whole story arc was apparently written in response to the fact that they wanted Lois and Superman to get married, and the TV show, Lois and Clark Adventures, I think, was already touching on a marriage, and so the comic book guys went, fine, we'll kill him. And so this sort of bookends that story arc, which I do already own, The Death of Superman. Also, there's a wonderful collection called The Greatest Superman Stories Ever Told, which kind of touches on some of the essence of what's going on here. And this I've always wanted to see, partly because of this imagery here, all these people gathering around the coffin of Superman, and there's a very stern looking Batman. Yeah, I'm glad I have it, and it's only about a £5, so it was a bargain in that sense as well. And finally, we have a book that I've been avoiding like the plague because I heard it was a massive disappointment, but I saw it in our local game store, not a local game store, but game, the game store. And I've been seeing this get increasingly dog-eared and abused and ignored, and the price has been going down and down and down, and finally it reached $2.99. And I thought, okay, fine, I'll buy it and I'll read it and I'll see if it's as disappointing as people say, and that is Star Wars Shattered Empire. This is the was it Journey to Star Wars: The Force Awakens, one of those books that inevitably won't tell you what you want it to tell you, because it can't, because they don't want to spoil what's going to come next in terms of the films, and they also don't want to tie down the filmmakers to any particular lore. So this film this film, I suppose, in the sense that it starts at the end of Return of the Jedi, but this extension to the film story dances so elegantly and so carefully around what happens next that it kind of doesn't really tell you anything. It tells you a little bit about Poe and his parents, I guess, Poe Dameron, and a little bit extra here and there. It's nice to see, for example, them going back to Naboo, and it makes you wonder how much Leia knows about whether or not about her origins, as it were. Does she know that she's a princess of Naboo? So some of that's kind of cool, but again, they don't really expand on it. So yeah, it was just as disappointing as I thought it would be. But it's also a book that I'm glad that I now have. So yeah, Shattered Empire. It did not shatter my expectations. So there you have it. Those are all the pickups, the DVDs, the games, and the graphic novels. And before we touch on that wonderful surprise item that's just over here on the chair, I just want to just quickly tell you about something else that's come into my world in the past couple of weeks, well, past couple of months really, and that is the Xbox 360 controller wireless receiver for PC. And this is something which I've been wanting for years. I've been looking at my Xbox 360 controller. This is a Windows machine. This is a Windows controller. Why can't I use it with my PC? And I was looking and never came across anything on the internet about it before. And then a couple of months ago-ish, I first heard from a friend about this receiver. It exists. It's a little dongle thing that plugs in via USB to your PC, and it's perfect. It's exactly what I need, in so much as I didn't want to get a PC-specific gamepad. I don't play PC in that way often enough to justify that, especially the particularly lovely ones that you can get. I wouldn't want a cheap, nasty one. But also, having now got this dongle thing that connects my Xbox 360 controller to the PC, I'm now more inclined to play the PC in that way. So it's a bit of a sort of a chicken and egg thing in that sense. And but getting the egg was the problem. And so my friend sort of said, yes, it exists. Here you go. This is what you're after. I finally was able to find one. And now that there's an Xbox One version of this, for the newer Xboxes, or Xbox controllers, I suppose. This one's gone a bit down in price, which is brilliant. And so I went looking for it, and I found that a couple of local shops had one, and the cheapest price I could find was with Grainger Games. Now, I've talked about Grainger Games previously on this channel. They often just have that ability to leave a slightly bitter taste in your mouth, and I still shop with them, and the staff are wonderful, and sometimes you can get good prices on games. And I went in and I asked, I said, well, yeah, this is on your website, but the website is rubbish because you've just updated it. It doesn't really work very well. Can you just tell me which store it's in, and if it's not local, can we order it in and I'll buy it from you here? And the guy said, doesn't exist. That doesn't exist. I was like, it does exist, and sadly I couldn't show it him on the website because the blooming website is rubbish. So I sort of googled it and I went, this is the thing I'm after. This Xbox 360 wireless receiver, I think that's its name. And he went, typed into the computer and checked. Doesn't exist. No, not here. I think what you're after is the Xbox One one. I went, no, it's not. No, it's definitely Xbox 360. And then to compound things, not only was he saying that I was just after a phantom product. But also he said, I think maybe they don't make them anymore. And then he said, I think maybe you had to buy it with a controller. Now that's true. They did. You could buy them with a controller back in the day, as it were. They would come with a controller, so you could if you didn't have an Xbox, you could just buy a controller and a dongle and use it with your PC. But I knew that wasn't the case, and I really resent being told that I'm after something that doesn't exist when I know it exists. And I've come to them with such a specific request that I'm not just guessing. I'm not saying, is there a solution to my problem? I'm saying, this is the solution to my problem. Do you have it? Your website said it did, that you do. And then B, having someone just guess, just make these random guesses out of thin air, and insist that somehow, because they're on that side of the desk, their guesses must carry some sort of weight. I was very annoyed. I was like, oh man, it's a 20-minute drive. It's not, it's not horrible, but nonetheless, I'd driven 20 minutes just to have some guy just go and just pluck guesses out of thin. Oh yeah. So it's a small story. It's a minor niggle, but nonetheless, it was a niggle, and it just bothered me. So I ended up buying the dongle from CEX, actually, South Shields, so just across the Tyne River from where I live. They had one. Cost a little bit more, but frankly it was worth it, because I didn't have someone saying doesn't exist to my face. And ever since then, it's been brilliant. It's been wonderful for playing some emulated games on some emulation websites, for example. It's been really good for getting a slightly better control grip on some of my PC games. But it's never going to fully replace, obviously, the good old keyboard and mouse. So for games like Half-Life, I think I'm going to prefer to use keyboard and mouse, just because that just feels right. But yeah, the Xbox 360 wireless receiver, I didn't know that it existed. I confirmed it did, and I was told it didn't. But now I can definitely promise you it exists. It's just there. I'm looking at it right now. It's a real thing. It's a real thing. I promise you. So yeah, that's that story. And finally we move on to the denouement of the video that I've been just so excited about for the past few days, and that is this. It's a box. Now this box here was my dad's toolbox, actually, and at some point I'm probably going to reclaim it, take off these stickers that we've put on here over the years, Noddy for example, and Big Ears, and I'll probably use it actually for some of my tools, or maybe some of my filming equipment, who knows. It's really nice to have this box. This obviously has come into my possession from the initial stages of us starting to have to go through the house after Mum's died, and actually because of the character of Mum, she sometimes lied about things. So she said that this box didn't exist anymore. She said it had gone, mainly because she couldn't quite bring herself to let go of it. This reminded her of Dad, and that's okay. But there are a couple of other things that she did that sort of weren't really okay. For example, she actually destroyed a pocket watch that Dad wanted me to have, and I didn't ask her for it when I reached 18 or when I reached 21. But a couple of years ago at my brother's wedding, I said, "Can I have that pocket watch? It might be cool to have it in a waistcoat." And yeah, she said that she had just dropped it, but we're pretty sure that she destroyed it because she couldn't stand to let it go. Which is, again, understandable. She, in that sense, it was intimately tied up in her mind with my dad. Would have been nice to have it though. But nonetheless, I now have this box, despite her saying that it didn't exist. Now, the eagle-eyed amongst you may have already noticed that it says here on a little label, Pog Game by Mark and Paul, my brother Paul. And that's because inside we have a whole host of... Oh, the lid's come off. Oh, so I'll put the lid over here. There we go. A whole host of, well, first of all, cards. And these cards I'll have to show you in that other video that I eventually do. That said though, for example, we have Yo, rent 5 Pog, because these cards were cards from the game that we called Pogopoly. We made our own board game up. Pay 3 Pog to Pog Box. Yeah, so we had slimes and instead of chances and this kind of thing. So it's a bit like Monopoly, but using Pogs. But nonetheless, in this box, in addition to our sort of handmade cards for Pogopoly and a little little book about Pogs, cool. It's rules and essential tactics for all cap players. Because of course Pogs are also known as milk caps as well. Don't know if you recall that. Yeah, so in addition to Pogs, so this Pogopoly stuff, we have our Pogs. Our Pogs and Slammers here. Just take that out of there. And I suppose I'm going to have to make a video all about what's in our Pog collection. Me and a friend recently went through this box and sort of put into cling film different piles and different types of Pogs. So for example, that's a particular collection of Pogs in this batch of cling film here. But so we've already done a little bit of sorting. There's also the Star Wars and other Tazos, and that's something else that I'll have to include in that video, is the Tazo collection, because that was very important to me back in the late 90s, along with a Star Wars sort of file effects, which had all sorts of cool quizzes and stuff to do with Star Wars. So this stuff, basically, it brings back the feels and the nostalgia immensely, and I'm definitely going to have to make a video about it. But Pogs, do you remember Pogs? I'd almost forgotten about them until I saw this box last week down in the house, and now I'm very excited to have Pogs and Slammers back in my life. So look out for that video coming soon. Pogs. No, I don't know if I built that up too much as the ending of this video. I don't know if that's been a bit of a letdown, but for me it was incredibly exciting to discover that box and then to find that it had our Pogopoly cards, handmade Pogopoly cards, and also the Pogs inside. It was very cool. And actually inside the lid there's some writing there. It says NOA for setting up dial tone. Gen V or something, dial tone generator maybe. My dad was a telecoms engineer for British Telecom, so dial tone must be linked with something to do with phones and setting up telephones. So I'm super glad that this box was not lost, definitely. Anyway guys, as I say, whether you found that an exciting end or not, I am super excited, and so I'm definitely going to have to make a little Pog and Tazos video in the near future. Thank you for watching, and as ever, until next time, do take care. And here's hoping that the rest of this week goes well. I'm hoping that the weather is okay, and that in particular I can support my brother through the funeral on Friday. But this video has been exactly what I needed today. So yeah. Anyway, as I say, until next time, do take care. Bye bye.